Hi, you're on the Alice Reddit Stories channel. Subscribe to my channel as well as to my Facebook, the link is in the description. Enjoy watching. She's been my coworker for roughly 3-5 years, and we've been texting regularly for about 2-3 years. Mostly about work, food, sports or TV shows, so nothing too deep or serious. We've been through tough periods at the company, and we both highly respect each other. I also found her attractive, well, she is by conventional standards, but my credo was no feelings for her coworkers. I bet now you know how this might be going, but a bit if context is necessary. During early summer, she got promoted and we had a little dispute over an issue at work. Luckily, we were able to sort it out shortly afterwards, and I noticed that she had a lot on her plate and I offered helping if it was something I could help with. Even if that includes listening to a rant about the company. A week or more passed, and surprisingly she took my offer and we met at a local pizzeria. We talked a lot, not all about work, and both enjoyed it. Afterwards we went to my flat because I make good coffee and she was curious if it was true. The evening continued, we opened a bottle of wine and I got to see a new side of her as previously we hadn't met in private without any coworkers. A few days later she also told me that she thoroughly enjoyed the evening and that accepting my offer provided an opportunity to get to know me better, as she was never able to really know what I was thinking despite our time at the company. Well, for most of the time that was certainly true because I kept everyone at arm's length due to a death of a close family member 4 years ago, and the subsequent fallout turned my life into hell for the next 2-5 years or so, and I've only really come to terms with everything that had happened a bit over a year ago. Since that point in time a year ago, I got a new flat, discovered 2 new hobbies/passions, started working out, and I finally, with the help of a few close people dear to my heart, could start to reassemble myself, for the lack of better words. Back to this year, late summer. We continued texting regularly, she told me a bit more personal stuff and vice versa. We again met for dinner, coffee and wine, and nothing else happened. Writing continued, we went to a museum together, she also started going to the same gym. I showed her a few exercises and how to correctly do them, but that was only twice, and since then our schedules kinda got in the way. We texted, she told me she had a feeling that she finally was able to peel off a few of my protective layers, and I told her she was correct. Okay. Well, now comes the interesting part. We went to the same pizzeria, afterwards coffee and wine, and I offered to watch an NFL game she hadn't seen. As we watched, she, at least for me, unexpectedly leaned against me and I put my arm around her. We failed to fall asleep on the couch side by side, and she told me she was frustrated as she couldn't really read my thoughts on her. Well, I thought I could wiggle myself out of this situation, I should have in retrospect, and I asked her if I could show her instead. We kissed passionately for I don't know how long. I was surprised she returned the favor, and then she told me she has been into me for well over 2 years. That was a huge surprise to me, honest to God, and I told her so. I also said that if she had asked me out over a year ago, due to my personal stuff, death of family member, largely unresolved, I probably would have declined anyway. Well, another huge surprise followed because she told me that she has had an ongoing relationship with a coworker for over half a year, and my inward reaction to that was oh shit, I wasn't sure what to say immediately afterwards. She also told me I was the one she talked to most often and that she was afraid to lose me now. To clarify, if I had known that she was in an ongoing relationship, I wouldn't have kissed her. There's absolutely no way, and I regret doing so now. So yeah, it's complicated as relationship status would be fitting, at least for her. As for me, no hard feelings against the coworker, it is what it is, and I don't know if I even want a relationship. Could I imagine one? Guess so, but as I have only started getting to know her recently, I didn't want to rush things. I don't want to pressure her to choose between him and me, and we agreed that I will tell her why I felt unable to open up or didn't see her signs for over 5 years. According to her it was so obvious, but I'm a dense dude, my head wasn't in the right place and I never really entertained the thought because I didn't want to make things complicated. TLDR, coworker was into me for over 2 years, I had to deal with personal stuff, death and grieving, I haven't told her yet about that stuff, at the time. We got to know each other better over the summer, and this weekend I thought I'd go for it as she asked about how I felt about her. We kissed and laid next to each other under the same blanket for a long time. In the morning she told me she's been dating another coworker for over six months. Kinda bummed out about it, and I don't know how to make things not super awkward from now on. My boyfriend, 31M, and I, 33F, have been together for 5 years. He's honestly the best man I have ever dated. He is kind to me, he makes me laugh, the sex is fantastic, and we have similar values. I respect him so much for how hard he works and the way he steps up and takes responsibility for his family. He's a great friend and just an amazing person all around. Don't forget to support my channel by subscribing, thank you. We met in October of 2017, during a particularly difficult time in my life. I was working as a waitress and my father was dying of brain cancer. I was emotionally and financially incapable of taking care of my children, twins who were then 2. At the time they lived 3 hours away with their father, not by choice or court order, but he lived with his parents, and with 3 adults and 2 incomes in that house, he was in a better position to care for them. At the time it was the only logical option. The intention was always for my kids to come home and live with me, and BF has known that since before he chose to date me. I worked really hard to get out of the service industry, and got a much more stable job in the medical field just in time for the kids to start preschool. At this point, BF and I were living together, and we moved the kids in while their dad was working with his job to transfer back to our city. It was a lot of hard work. I worked full-time, would go pick up the kids, make it home in time to cook, get ready for school the next day, have bath time, story time, bedtime, etc., just in time for BF to get home from the gym and have missed it all. He did offer support in other ways. He paid a majority of the rent and utilities because nearly all of my income was going to childcare. And sometimes on the weekends he'd hang out with the kids long enough for me to run errands by myself. But it never seemed like enough. I was getting burned out fast, but the more I asked for help, the more BF seemed to pull away. There always seemed to be something: drinks with friends, working out at the gym, going to play disc golf. I lived with BF, but I still felt like a single mom. We started fighting more and more, and I started drinking very heavily to deal with everything. I suggested couples counseling, and he did go to one session with me, but he refused to go again. He was a psychology major in college and therefore thinks therapy won't work on him. He was frustrated that we never got any time to ourselves anymore, despite me promising it was temporary, that the kids' dad was moving back into town, and that there would be more balance in our lives again. And I was frustrated that because he wasn't around, I was managing the kids and the house alone. I might have dealt with the situation better if he had stepped up and been more helpful around the house, allowing me to focus on doing the mom things, but that never happened. One day when he let me use his laptop while he was out, his messages were open, and I knew I shouldn't have gone through them, but I found something. Messages back and forth between himself and some girl he met while in Vegas for EDC. He swore up and down that nothing happened, and he was just trying to find Molly, and he didn't speak to her again after it was over, but to this day, I don't believe that. I got blackout drunk and destroyed some of his things. He moved out. The very next weekend the kid's dad moved into town, and then immediately after that is when COVID hit. Suddenly, I had all the free time BF said he wanted, but no one to share it with. We didn't speak for 9 months. I never stopped thinking about him, no matter how hard I tried, and I ended up reaching out to see how he was doing, and we quickly reconnected. Since then, he has been reluctant to spend time with the kids, and I was partially in agreement. We'd barely make it 6 months before I'd have another episode that would merit taking a break, not knowing if we'd ever see each other again. I've struggled with addiction to alcohol for 13 years. I would drink to celebrate, drink when I was sad, drink to cope, drink when stressed. Any reason at all was a reason to drink for me, and once I'd start, I would not stop until I was physically incapable of picking up a glass. Most of the time things were fine. Sometimes, I'd wake up to a slew of embarrassing texts I had sent. But on a few occasions, more than I care to admit, I would get blackout drunk, pick a fight, and say or do something vicious or hurtful, and that's not at all who I am sober. On December 17th of 2021, he had invited me to a show, Green Velvet maybe, and I was anxious to be around so many people and drinking very heavily to deal. BF and I had been in a really good spot for about 5 months at this point. We weren't fighting, our sex life was great, everything was going well, but I drank too much. I don't remember anything after getting in the car to go home. I woke up the next morning on my couch with the most overwhelming sense of humiliation I have ever felt. I still don't entirely know what happened that led up to this fight, but I do know that I keyed his truck. I still feel deeply ashamed of the way I acted, and I haven't had a drop of alcohol since that day. I didn't deserve his forgiveness, but we did get back together after a few months, and things have never been better. I've started taking responsibility for myself, learned to cope with my own anxiety and depression without alcohol, and I'm finally turning into the mom and person I am supposed to be. BF and I would spend time together on the days my kids were with their dad, and being in his company makes me feel like I'm home. I haven't pushed him to come spend time with me and the kids, but I have invited him a handful of times just to come over for dinner and a movie when I have them, something simple and low pressure. Each time he has turned me down. But I have been patient, knowing I have to prove myself before he makes the commitment because of the way I have acted in the past. Last Wednesday when he came over, rather than have a specific time he could turn down due to not feeling well or already having plans, I simply asked, "Would you mind sometime in the near future spending time with me when I also have my kids?" He said, "Maybe." I said that it's important to me, and he responded, "I'm not really looking to be a part of that." I guess I shouldn't have been dumbfounded, but I was hurt and asked that he leave immediately. We've talked over text a few times since then. He says he's afraid of things going back to the way they were and said he gets migraines and anxiety attacks, both of which have been happening completely independent of me or my kids, and that he's been kicking the can down the road because we have been doing so well. He said he doesn't want to give up his alone time, but I never asked him to. In fact, I was asking that he spend maybe one night a week with me when I have them so that I too get some alone time. The way things are right now, I either have the kids or I am with him, I never get time to myself, and if he would just meet me in the middle we could both have our alone time and still have a fulfilling relationship. My kids don't need a dad. They have one that loves them very much and is very active in their lives. What I need is a partner who can manage to stomach spending time with me while I have my kids without having an anxiety attack about some perceived role he has to play as a father figure. I can't reintroduce him to their lives if he is just going to run off again. And I can't keep seeing him if there's no hope in integrating these two very different lives I'm living. Since Wednesday he has backtracked and said that he'd try and start spending time with us, but I have told him it's unfair to my kids to bring him around before he has talked to a counselor about his anxiety, and that I won't be seeing him again either until he has taken that step. He admitted he's been taking advantage of our situation and that he hasn't been trying hard enough, and he's agreed to talk to a counselor, but I honestly don't know if it will be enough. I've come so far in my sobriety over the last 10 months, and I feel like I'm moving forward, but he wants to stay still. I love him so much, and we are so emotionally compatible. I don't want to give up, but I don't know what else to do. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting articles ahead.